What's up guys, this is Nugget. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about the latest installment in the Resident Evil franchise, Resident Evil 7. So before we start, disclaimer, I have not played it myself yet. The reason being I am a broke college bitch. I just dropped so much money on textbooks and rent and I have to buy a car. It's just a whole thing. So I have not been able to spend $60 on a video game. But luckily, there is the internet, and I have been able to watch several different walkthroughs, let's plays of Resident Evil 7. I watched quite a few different channels. I watched one guy's channel that was literally an 8-hour walkthrough on Madhouse, and then I've also been watching let's players like Markiplier and Two Best Friends Play, and all of these other channels. So I have a very good idea of the game. I've watched every second of it. So I definitely know what's going on. So the first thing I want to mention is that this game is nightmare-ish. And what I mean by that is, you know, it's literally how it sounds. It's terrifying. It's horrifying. It kept me up at night and I watched it. I didn't even play it. I watched it and it was scary. The old Resident Evil games, I never lost sleep over. And I actually played them. I don't know what it is about this new game. I guess it's the content itself. Maybe it's the first person aspect that makes it so terrifying. Maybe it's the really great graphics. I don't know. But, you know, the other Resident Evil games, they had elements of scary to them. You had the regenerators in Resident Evil 4. And they were terrifying. And they scared me a lot. But also I was 10 years old when I played that game, so it was natural that I'd be that terrified of those creatures. But other than that, the rest of, Resident Evil 4, these other games, they didn't scare me as much as this game did. This game, literally, I had to sleep with my TV on, my lights on. I also had my phone playing with my headphones in. Like, it was ridiculous. It was terrifying, and again, I didn't even play it. So that's something that I thought was pretty cool. Even though, I don't like losing sleep, but I thought it was pretty cool that it was that scary. And I hope they keep up with that in future games. So let's talk about what they did way right. The graphics. The graphics are absolutely amazing. It looked so real. Actually, at some parts, it really looked like they mixed live action. Especially, the beginning, like literally the first 5 seconds of the game where he's driving to the house. I'm not really sure, but it looked awesome. Obviously, there were some glitchy moments, but that's going to happen in any game. Especially, I noticed I watched the Game Grumps, what they've uploaded so far. They are playing with the VR, and it looks really goofy with some of the outer corners, and I'm not sure if that's just like their system or if something's going on. And it is only VR. I didn't, that wasn't in any of the other, PlayStation or PC walkthroughs I saw. It just happened to be VR, but still it was a little goofy, and especially if you've seen the VR videos, the main character's arms are cut off and you just see a floating arm as you're grabbing things, and it's so goofy, and I'm not sure what happened there, but if you're not playing VR, you don't have to worry about that. The graphics are great, besides little obvious things, but for the most part, I thought that was amazing. And then the graphics are complemented by a really great setting. Everything seems to be really well thought out. It looks like the creators really took time to put all of these little intricate details into the game, and they all sort of make sense with the lives of the Baker family at the house. Also, another thing, usually Resident Evil has several different settings. What I mean by that is they have several different maps. So you have like usually 3 different locations that you go to within every single Resident Evil game, or at least several different locations, but this game only really had 2, and you only spend time in the second location, like I'm gonna say a quarter of the game. So for 3/4 of the game, you're pretty much inside this housing complex, I guess you could say, or property. Because you're not just in one house, it's a whole property owned by this Baker family. So I thought that was really cool, and that might sound boring to some people, but if you haven't played it yet, but once you play it or watch it, you realize, they took a lot of time in developing the house and how everything is laid out, and it's really, really cool. I actually liked how you really understand the layout of the house by the end of the game, and that seemed kind of cool to me, at least. Especially, you know, as someone who didn't play it, it makes me want to play it because I want to personally explore the house for myself. Even though I know everything that happens, I know where everything is, but I still want to explore it for myself. Also, a lot of cool things with the Madhouse setting, especially the cassette saving mechanic. How, you know, back in the old Resident Evil games, you know how you had to find a ribbon to be able to save on the typewriters, and that was the only way you could save. So they implemented that into the Madhouse difficulty setting, which I think is cool. It adds a whole other difficulty to it, and also I'm glad they didn't add it to all of the difficulty settings, because that is a really hard thing to do in a game, to, you know, not only worry about everything else, but also worry about how you're going to save the game. So I like that they incorporated it into the game, but they didn't make it a feature for every single difficulty settings. So that was a cool callback. Something they also did way right was the quick time events. And if you're someone like me who didn't play it and you're like, I didn't even see any quick time events, that's my point. You really didn't see any quick time events in this game. The very few that there were, they were so subtle. I didn't even realize, you know, as someone who was watching it, I didn't realize that it was happening until a little bit after, when when everything would play out. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was just a QuickTime event. But there was no obnoxious button, you know, on the screen. Like, they trusted you to be able to do the event, and it wasn't often. Like, you didn't have to, it wasn't a big QuickTime event every time you had to, you know, move past a shelf or some shit. Like, it was just, they did away with them pretty much completely, and the only ones that were there were very subtle. So it was awesome. Thank you so much, Capcom, for taking those away, because that was really annoying in Resident Evil 6. That was honestly, out of all the weird things in Resident Evil 6, that was actually one of my biggest complaints, was the absurd amount of QuickTime events that were just dumb. They were just so dumb. I loved the videotape segments. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, in the game you find videotapes and you play them in a VCR. There's plenty of them throughout the house. And it's not just a cutscene, or, you know, you don't just sit there and watch this videotape for exposition or plot or anything like that. You literally get to play the segment on the videotape, and I think that is the coolest thing ever. Especially, it lets you play more characters. It lets you complete situations where, spoiler alert, your character might die, because you're not playing Ethan, the main character of the game. And I just thought that was such a cool idea, especially, you know, they could have made you just sit there and watch it. It could have just been a cutscene, and they didn't. They didn't do that to you. They let you play it. It helps you learn different gaming mechanics that you need for the rest of the game. It helps you find different things in different areas. It's just really cool how they did that segment and how you could play other. It was just awesome. It was just awesome. I could go on and on. I thought that was so cool. Another thing that the game did way right were the bakers themselves. They are the antagonists of the game, and I feel like they were just done so well on so many levels. They have great lines. Just everything they say is funny and horrifying, hilariously horrifying. Like, everything they say is just gold. And it's kind of like Nemesis, you know, Resident Evil Nemesis, how they're a constant threat throughout the whole game. They do have the actual boss battles, which are fun in themselves. They're fun and creepy, and I think the bakers are fun and creepy. I think that's their motto, just fun and creepy fun. So they have boss battles that are great, and they're super, I feel like they're pretty creative and gross and creepy, but they're also a constant threat throughout the whole game, especially Papa, or Father, whatever you want to call him. And you can hide from him, you can try and kill him. Well, it won't kill him, it'll just stun him for a little bit. So again, a lot like Nemesis, and I really like that concept. I love games where you have a constant threat throughout the whole game. I think those are especially fun, and it just makes the tension that much greater. So I'm glad Resident Evil brought something like that back. And in saying all this, you know, they're the antagonists. They're not the main antagonists, but you think they are. Spoiler alert. You think they're the main antagonists throughout the whole game, but by the end of it, and I'm not going to say what it is, but you find out something about them, and you actually end up sympathizing with them, which I thought was so cool that they did that, because they didn't have to do that, or it could have been done poorly, but it wasn't. It was done really well. The fact that you end up being so creeped out and hating them throughout, like, 3/4 of the game, and then in the last quarter you end up feeling sorry for them. I felt so sorry for them. I felt way more sorry for them than I did for Mia or Ethan, or anyone else in the game really. So I thought that was just so well done, and I thought it was awesome. Now we have to move on to the goofy shit. So there was a lot of this in the game. Well, not a lot, but just it kept coming up, and I was like, why, Resident Evil? Why does this happen? This is stuff that kind of happens a lot in Resident Evil, I feel like. So, for one, the women's faces. This might seem weird, but I don't know what it is about Resident Evil faces lately with the women. It's not the men. Like, the men's faces look really well done, but for some reason it's the women. Like, I think it's something with their mouths. Like, they just look off to me. They don't move right, and it makes them look creepier. Like, I thought Mia was creepy before she actually became creepy, just because of how her mouth was moving. And I don't know why they can't, because it's not a problem with you can't say it's an animation problem, because it's not a problem with the guys. So I don't know what it is with the women, because it's not just this game, especially Revelations 2 with Claire Redfield. Everyone seemed to have a problem with her face because it just was weird looking, and I don't know, the same thing happened in this game, and I'm really not sure what Capcom's deal is with women's faces, but they need to work on it, because unless maybe that's the point, making them look creepy, but I don't know. The healing was a little silly to me. They used, you know, the same herbs. You combine herbs to make kind of like a healing liquid thingy. I don't want to say potion, that just sounds odd. There's parts where you pour them onto your body, and I liked at first how you could see yourself pouring the healing liquid onto your arm to heal it. I thought that was cool, but it was only cool when your arm was hurt and you were pouring the liquid on. I was like, alright, so maybe every time you get hurt, you pour the healing liquid onto whatever body part got hurt. That makes sense to me. But that's not what happens. Throughout the rest of the game, no matter what body part you hit, except for a couple, you know, more scripted sequences, no matter what body part you hit, you end up pouring this liquid onto your hand. And I really don't know why they did that. I just thought it looked a little silly at times when, you know, you were clearly like stabbed in the stomach, and then, oh, let me just pour this healing potion onto my left hand real quick. See how that works. And also there's one point where you have limbs severed, and you do the same thing, and it just, I don't know what it was about the severed limbs that looked so goofy to me, but they looked kind of goofy. So now the following things that I found a little goofy or had a little bit of questions with are definitely ending spoilers. So if you have not watched the game or played the game yourself, or you just don't like to be spoiled, then I will see you another time. Thank you for watching.